Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown, joined with my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes, on this Monday morning. This is, of course, transfer deadline day, and this is the Monday right after the win against Burnley. Very, very nice to experience a winning feeling, which was a bit odd, and but much needed nonetheless. We've obviously had quite a bit of transfer activity relative to
Mm.
United in the last couple of days. So mostly outgoings with Lamon's incoming. We'll talk about that and some of the other permutations with the signings in and out. I think first of all, TZ, before we get to the transfers, which will obviously dominate most of the show, let's talk about the Burnley game.
Yep.
Give us your thoughts.
I thought it was great. I mean, I know United conceded a couple goals, but if I'm looking at the performance itself, obviously we'll get to why we conceded a couple of goals. But if I'm looking at the performance itself, um, very good, very, very good. I mean, it's what you'd want, in terms of the ability to produce chances, the ability to apply pressure, the ability to play attacking football,
Mm-hmm.
to a team that you should be doing that against. And that's the thing I think, you get this thing always with United, right? You go, we had a good game against Burnley, we produced 26 shots, we're battering them, we go, it's Burnley. Okay, fine. They're in the Premier League. You're going to play them twice a year. They're worth the same points as anybody else. And the thing is that doing that against Burnley is what you're supposed to do if you're a good team. So by
Mm-hmm.
saying it's just Burnley and you should, it's nothing special to do that. Well, I can tell you Newcastle just had a 0-0 against Leeds, the same weekend. They couldn't create a chance against Leeds, another relegation team and all that. So producing like that against the teams you should, to me, is a good sign. That's what you want. And I thought it was interesting, and it's been a kind of a unique thing to see that a lot of times before the game you look at the lineup and you think, and then that turns out to be a good game. One of the things that I quite found a bit interesting is I really like how they play when Joshua Xerxes gets on the pitch. I felt this way for a while. I don't know what it is about him, but there's something he does in the way that he moves, in the way that he drops, in the way that he links up with other players that just makes the whole team feel a lot more connected. And then, of course, in addition to that, Brian and Bumo had is really come to life. And lastly, I would say the biggest difference, I think this is where I put it down to just early season jitters and things. The biggest difference otherwise is just some players performing. I mean, Ahmad, he missed his chance that he had that he should have scored. But other than that, he had a very good game. He had a really, really nice game, taking players on, drawing the penalty at him. But he did a lot in that game where he'd been really poor the first few games of the season. And sometimes it's just, comes down to, especially in the early season, you just have to play. You just have to play into form and start producing. And Bumo, same goes for him. He looked way better in that game than in some games prior.
So, who won the game? Was it Man United or Ruben Amorim? Because when Man United lose, Ruben Amorim
Yeah.
loses.
Yeah. And
Ruben
when you win,
Amorim
it's
against Grimsby. So, was it Amorim that won the game, or was it
yeah.
Man
Right.
United?
Yeah.
Look, I've had my criticism of Amorim, but there are certain things where there's a hyper fixation on him that leads to utterly ridiculous conclusions, extrapolations.
Yep.
He was heavily criticized on Friday for saying about sometimes he loves his players, sometimes he hates them, sometimes he wants to quit, sometimes he doesn't. And I assume a lot of that criticism came from what a young men that haven't experienced life yet.
Yeah.
Okay. You're in for one rude awakening. I don't care
Mm.
what relationship you have, if it's your wife or if it's your job or your husband. If you aren't experiencing the entire range of human emotions with this particular
Mhm.
thing, it's either dead or you don't love it. Right?
Yep.
Anything that you're around anything long enough, doing something long
Yep.
enough, you're going to experience all those emotions. If Amarim said he wasn't feeling that way, I wouldn't believe him, right?
Yep.
Because that's what the United job should do. To you, it's a really, really difficult job. But I didn't agree with that criticism. And then
Yeah.
if you ever want to solicit the opinion of pseudoscientific bullshit, ask a body
Mhm.
language expert. Which one? There is no such thing as a body language expert, right? Uh, and I'm like, why did they do this bullshit? You know,
Mhm.
like I remember Garnacho being rinsed over celebrating getting the penalty. We never heard anything like that again, right? All of a sudden, the injustice of Europa League winners getting into the Champions League, we never heard that again. And
Mhm.
you all of a sudden, United ban the league isn't the conversation anymore. We're now not allowed to celebrate winning against Burnley because that's embarrassing. But you're a plastic fan if you don't. But you're an embarrassment if you do. These rules only exist to United. I look at some of this coverage and think, are you not embarrassed?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like, Pep Guardiola scratching his face off saying he wants to harm himself because of the game gets far less criticism than how many steps Ruben Amorim takes on the sidelines in a game. What is the necessity of this? What is the point of this stuff? And as to your talk on that, it's one of the things I think that football swings in a few different directions, and some of the dialogue on it swings in a few different directions. 10 years ago, you couldn't have any discourse about systems and tactics or things like that. I think for the most part, it was all passion and running and desire. And then it sometimes it swings the other way. And right now, a lot of the discourse around football is purely it's like everything is 100% tactics. You lose to a fourth tier team, and people are trying to break down tactics, and any emotion is seen as weird or seen as irregular or seen as odd. But the truth of the matter is that, and any great good manager will tell you this too, most of them have. It's a lot more to do with emotion and mental focus than it is tactics. Every single game is a lot more to do with the people on the pitch, how they feel that day, how they feel with each other, those aspects than it is that. And it's the same for the manager. They're very emotional. Some of them can hide it at times, but they're very emotional people. And they tend to be very strong in the way that they talk and act around others. There's nothing
Well,
weird about it.
there's just so much bullshit in relative to this. Oh, they need to be mentally mature. What exactly is that, and how does one acquire it?
Yeah.
Or what drill can I do to bring mental resilience? Or like this is bullshit, right? Like these are just oh, you're soft if you do this, or you're mentally weak. Like, this is all nonsense, right?
Mhm.
The I don't care. Every human being, motion is an autonomic response in the body. We're not choosing it.
Yeah.
I'm not choosing my emotional reaction to your question, and no one's choosing their emotional reaction to what I'm saying. Everyone experiences this. Emotion can control behavior or it can drive behavior. If it drives it, it's healthy. If it controls it, it's not. Right. But the admitting, when you get to the top level in football, every top manager up there knows tactics, football inside out. But to be successful requires you to have the best in the business of people around you, because now these football clubs are so big that you need to
Yeah.
rely on so many others for the competence, and for and then to get all these people pulling in the same direction for a collective. It's really hard to do. Like that is almost alchemy. It's to get
Yeah.
that instead of football club and to manage people. Most managers fail because of the incompetence or the football club around them. And I feel like there's a lot of young men have had their head full of shit by people like Andrew
Mm.
Tate, that men don't feel
Yeah.
feel emotion or not. This is total and utter nonsense that these young men are in for their biggest rude awakening of their lives.
For sure.
You
and
know,
and again, it's got to be said too, like very often the difference between a successful footballer and a failed footballer is in here. It's not their talent.
always
It never has been.
just let me just a quick segue on this. Let me name drop here for one quick second, but this is important, right? When I was doing mental health work with Mike Tyson, I was talking to him about fear, right? And because I was asking him, were you afraid going into your fights and stuff? And he said, let me tell you what Customata, his first trainer, told him about fear. Fear is our friend. Fear is the reason why our ancestors didn't do stupid shit, so we're still alive. Fear is what gives the deer an adrenaline rush to escape its predator, but it's like fire. If you control it, you can build civilizations, you can heat your home, and you can cook your food. If you don't control it, it will consume everything around you. It will burn you. It will destroy everything around you. The difference between the fighter that wins and the fighter that loses is the one that controls their fear. Fear is going to happen. It's a healthy autonomic response. You can't eliminate it. You can't run from it. You're going to get it. Everyone gets it. So anyone who tells you they don't feel that stuff or it's a weakness to feel it are idiots.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the main difference is the control of it. And I mentioned before, like these guys don't have a way to erase, trauma that's happened. They don't have a way to erase the bad experiences that they've dealt with at the club, and players don't and managers don't. They don't have a way. And so they can work to control it and they can work to deal with it. But it's also what happens. And it's what happened really at Grimsby. You can see it. And it's what they have to get past. And to some degree, it's a part of why they have to turn over so much of this team and why you're seeing, I mean, I think there's 8 first team outs today total this summer, which is a lot more than we've seen, because sometimes it's just about we need fresh people who don't have these experiences in the past, in this situation to not have an overload of those, traumatic incidents
Well,
that have
but the
happened.
thing is, James, we remember Ronaldo's comment about the aquarium,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand is this. Let's just say you have a business and you hire the best engineers in the world, and these are people that are the head of their professions, highly sought after, and you bring them to your company. 2 years later, there's no end product. The engineers that you hire now look like novices, completely broken, and this cycle keeps happening. That has to be an institutional problem. That has to be something
Sure.
that is institutional, because that is an indictment on the organization that they can't get productivity out. Because look, these are
Mhm.
players that have a lot of these players that have come to United
Yep.
that have failed
Yep.
before they came. Top clubs in the world
Yeah.
wanted them, and
No,
then
no, yeah, yeah, for
like,
sure.
what is going on inside that football club?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I agree with that. Also think at the same time, if they've been there a while,
Yes, I agree with
even
you.
if you change the
Yeah.
institution, now you've still got to change the fish because they're infected, from what
Mhm.
was in the aquarium before. And not blame, and that's what happens. And my hope is that United don't have those failures moving forward, because that would how the new signings get on will be evidence, right?
Mhm.
That the institution has changed, that the aquarium is cleaned, it's fixed up, the water's good. Some of the positives I look at are players like Matthias de Ligt. He's
Mhm.
come on, I think, this season, and he's way
Yes.
better than last year. He's
Yes.
improving rather than sinking. Lenny Yoro improving rather than sinking.
Mhm.
And that to me is a good sign that they're coming in, and instead of getting worse, they're getting better. For the most part, you're not going to have 100%, but it should be a majority of the players come in and improve, and they get more confident and more strong, and better every week, not worse and worse. So far, we're seeing that, and I think that's a good sign from my perspective.
Yeah, I would say that Delectus had a really healthy start to the
Yeah.
season. Want to ask you about a couple other things relative to that, because Amarim obviously has had his system heavily criticized. One of the things that I think what I heard him say on, I think it was Sunday after the game, is yes, we
Yeah.
have a system, but there's a lot of variation within the system where it's not as rigid as what people have made out to be. I was watching the Sporting City game where Sporting
Yeah.
destroyed them, and how you can see that these players knew that system so well, and how they found space was really, really interesting. Midfield through to the forwards.
Yep.
And so, when that when it works, it looks fantastic. But of course, there are those who criticize him for not having flexibility within the system. But I do agree with him in that you have to fail using your own principles, methods. Once you abandon those and try to adopt
Yeah.
something else, then you lose the trust of the players.
Yeah, you're floundering, right? And you're floundering in the end, and then you're at this position where you go like, well, like he said that in those comments, like if I just change it, then the players won't believe in me, because if I don't know what I'm doing as the leader and I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, why are they going to trust the ideas that I come up with? You kind of have to stick with it. And I think what we've dealt with, and where you can get, in a lack of flexibility, but I think it's the same of learning anything. If you're going to, learn any type of skill, let's say you were going to learn to skateboard. I mean, use it as an example, maybe not many people are familiar with, but if you were going to learn to skateboard, you don't jump on and start to figure out how to do 33 different tricks on the board, right? The first thing
Unless
is you have to do the basics. Yeah, unless you're
Mm.
very impressive stuff. You got to do the basics, but it's any skill you learn, right? You learn to do the basics, then the flexibility comes into it, then the flair comes into it, then the style comes into it. You know what I mean? Then the choices, because what happens on the pitch is the players faced with a situation. It's all individuals, and they're faced with a situation, and there's always going to be in any system maybe 5 different choices they can make in that situation. They get the ball there. Do I turn up the pitch? Do I look for where's the pass I'm supposed to look for? Do I recycle it? Do I go all the way back to the keeper? What do I do? And within the system, there's always going to be that choice. And you have to learn the basics until you can learn what the choice is. And then as you get familiar with that, the different, the defense is going to give you different views, different angles, different attacks, different pressing, and you learn the options that you have in those situations. You can't learn all the options at once. You start with one, you do the basics, you get to two,
Yeah,
to three, you add it up gradually. Like it's the same way you learn anything
yeah,
until you know how to adapt to different scenarios.
yeah. You get accelerated returns once you start it's compound interest, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
You get accelerated returns once you get to a certain baseline level of mastery or whatever it is you're doing. Um, and I think anyway, creativity isn't something that we can coach. It just
yeah,
happens as a
yeah,
consequence of the confidence. And in
yep,
training, you can't replicate high speed multi-processing. What you can do is you can replicate angles.
yep,
But the problem is you can't you have your defense, but you can't replicate what the opposition does. So it's hard to the only way you can really master these games is by confidence in games, from winning games. You can't master it in training because if you're exceptional in training but you get killed on a Saturday, it's irrelevant.
yep.
So but what I will say is this season United start relative to everyone else except Liverpool is really not that bad.
No, I mean, once you contextualize it, United have been bad for in the Premier League. Half of a Fulham game, maybe 10 minutes during Burnley that they lost a little control, but you can't expect to control a 90-minute game. Other than that, it's been a good performance. And I'm looking at Newcastle, 3 games, all this praise being dumped on them. They're at the bottom of the league. They haven't won a game. They haven't scored in 2 of their 3 matches. It's like it's a very interesting thing when you look at the narratives that come into play, but it's really
Look,
not
I
bad. I
mean,
mean, I'm more impressed with them than Arsenal right now. Arsenal look terrible when I've watched them,
look
frankly.
at City, James. I
Yeah.
mean, the Pep Guardiola, exceptional coach, but what you're seeing is because we are losing great individual talent that's so obvious to spot, that's so obviously better,
Yeah.
and there's just a lot of homogeneity, with players today.
Mhm.
It's really difficult now to rebuild a team that is consistently better than the opposition.
Yeah.
And I mean, they City signed James Trafford, right? One of the goalkeepers that United wanted. He makes one mistake, and now Guardiola bin.
Donnarumma's in the next
Yeah, we've had goalkeepers. These 2 goalkeepers foisted upon us for years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this Nico Gonzalez gone, right? He
Yeah.
was bought 6 months ago. Like, if that happened at United, James, right? I mean, there's no way Ruben Amorim's getting the steps counted. Fuck's sake, right? I mean, and this is just this constant cycle and massive amounts of money spent, and they're permitted failures. And I understand Guardiola, he's been very successful, but nonetheless, even when United were that successful under Ferguson, they were never given that type of leeway. And you look at Liverpool spending. I mean,
Mm.
what their gross spending was, it 500 million, half a
It's
billion
like
this summer.
500 million in one summer.
I mean,
It's crazy.
and by the way, James, we're reading articles about Jesko needing to score. Where's my Florian Wirtz articles?
I know. One of the most expensive transfers of all time. He's been terrible. Not just not scoring. He's been bad. Straight up bad.
I watched. I've watched a couple of their games. And in both those games, didn't watch the Newcastle game, the other game, I forgot he was playing.
Mhm.
Right? I'm like,
Yeah.
birds coming off. I'm like, shit. I forgot. I mean, it could come good, but if he had that start at United, I mean, Sesko's already
His
getting it.
career would be over, you know?
Graham Souness will be, spontaneously combust. But they spent an enormous amount of money.
Yeah.
So United, of course, have balanced some of their spending with players that have gone out.
Yep.
Luke Anthony, United finally agreed to deal with Bettis for him. Rasmus Hoyland out, of course, is gone
Mhm.
to
Loan
the
plus obligation, and those are permanents, which is pretty good considering, it's a loan plus obligation for Rasmus, but it's based on essentially them qualifying for Champions League, which they would be expected to as the title winners, so,
Alejandro
yeah.
Garnacho. Um, he has gone to Chelsea. He's
Mhm.
gone to Chelsea since we last recorded this podcast. It was expected. We knew we would do that. Not a glorious exit by any means, James. I think he has just put a message up a couple of hours, an hour or two
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
which is something that he could have done days ago, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Didn't, and now it sort of falls flat.
Especially after comments about, like, Chelsea, using United being a stepping stone essentially in the way
Yeah,
that he's presented it, it's not
when
a
Garnacho,
great look for himself.
I believe a future version of Garnacho will be a bit embarrassed by some of
Mhm.
this when he looks back. I suppose it's when Chelsea fans were not happy when Mason Mount said a few things about
Yeah.
us being a dream club. I understand. I didn't think that was necessary from Garnacho, and he now faces the impossible job of getting in that team. And it's I don't know how he does that, but th- as we said in the podcast the other day, Amorim United had to sell Garnacho.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
there has to be a message that you know just if we sack a manager, you don't get to stay and get a fresh start. So United had to do the deal.
Yeah, they definitely had to get him out. They had to move it. He wasn't going to return into this team under any circumstances.
Rasmus Hoyland. So he has gone. United, of course, wanted him gone. Maybe I felt a bit for Hoyland at the end because he handled the entire exit with dignity, in my
Yes,
opinion.
he did. Yeah.
He's
He,
certainly
he
needed.
did very well actually. Yeah.
But I still think Rasmus Hoyland in about 2 years will be looking at a very, very good striker in Serie A. But Chelsea had to deal or City had to deal with Cole Palmer and letting him
Mhm.
go. Chelsea had to deal with De Bruyne and
Yep.
Salah. Going on and being exceptional players. This happens all the time, right? So
Yep.
United can't. Whatever happens with Hoyland, that's a different issue than United's. Than making sure United are top class. If whatever happens with Manchester United, whatever happens with Rasmus Hoyland are different stories. I think United
Yep.
have to have a 2 year threshold, James. Of if you aren't delivering within 2 years, you have to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have to stick to that. I mean, you look right now as well, you kind of get the idea with Onana that they're doing a little bit of the same thing that they've
Mm.
done with Hoyland here. You had the suspicion, right? I think we even talked about this, the suspicion when he was left out of the game against Arsenal entirely, right? Not even selected. He's been benched for all 3 Premier League games with Bayindir taking the spot. And now you get this story. Now you have a keeper coming in, and you've got 4. If I'm looking at that, Onana's not going to be in the squad after the international break because I think Bayindir's taken his starting spot in the Premier League. Even if Lemans wouldn't start, that would be the case, and Lemans would be the second keeper off the bench, I would believe. So, United, I think, have adopted this very quick policy of 2 years, and that's it. And they have to because they can't afford to keep giving players more time than that. And
With
I think it is the right approach.
with Onana, James, it looks to me like Ruben Amorim came to that decision long before he was left out. Surely they communicated to Onana at the end of last season, go get another football club.
Yep.
because it looks to
Yeah.
me like United wanted him to leave.
Yeah.
I would be. I mean, I don't know if someone told him if you don't go, you'll stay as the number one. I don't know, but it it's a weird situation to me, James,
Mm.
because to me, if you're a goalkeeper and your football club's telling you you're not going to be my number one, if I can send another goalkeeper, he has to leave. Um, I Ruben Amor, I think that one of the biggest contributing factors to Ten Hag's sacking was Onana, right?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
there's no question, James. If you see a catalogue of errors Onana's committed at United, it defies belief.
Yeah.
Ruben Amorim would have lost his job, in my opinion, if he hadn't have signed a goalkeeper before the end of the
Yeah.
window for
Yeah.
the same
100%.
reason.
Yep.
And so United had to sign a goalkeeper, but it's amazing to me that Onana hasn't moved on.
Yeah, it is a weird one, and I have had trouble piecing together the whole deal with regards to this keeper thing, because they spent all season looking for a keeper. That's the confusing part. I say that with absolute 100% certainty. They had many conversations with James Trafford. They've been tracking Lamens since November. They've been scouting, watching, making contact. And then there was this sort of an odd occasion where it was sort of decided, well, maybe we won't get a keeper. But I also know firsthand that they wanted a keeper, that the three priorities after Mbeumo were striker, midfielder, and goalkeeper. And they weren't sure they'd get to all of them, but that they were definitely the three things on the list to address. I think part of what happened here, and what's confusing about this, and I don't want to overstep on speaking on this on a player, because it's hard to do this, but I can say for sure that the club were wholly unimpressed with Onana coming back unfit after summer, because I think they feel that the injury was to a degree a not unpredictable, because he wasn't in shape. A lot of the players came back really fit, really healthy. They
Yeah,
had
you're
plans.
Spain, you could see that Casemiro,
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. And I think that's one of the things we've seen at the start of the season. A lot of them have looked fitter than they did last year to start, and um, I think that was unimpressive to them. And I just wondered if there's something. I'm confused. Like, did he not see the writing on the wall? Like, how did he allow that to happen
Yeah,
after the season he had? You can't. Like, you should be back at 110% fitness, not at 90% or 80% or anything like that. I it feels like there's just a non. He can't see what's in front of him in this
yeah.
case.
I don't understand that either. To me, after the seasons you've just had, this is an own goal. Like the easiest thing in the
Yeah.
world to do that costs nothing is to come back in shape so that you don't draw negative attention to yourself
Yeah.
and create more negative equity in your reputation. And to me, Ruben Amorim has to be ruthless with that
Yeah.
because that's unacceptable. I mean, you're a
Mhm.
professional footballer, and that's true for anyone. You come back certain condition if you've neglected yourself over the summer, especially after you've just had a disastrous season. That
Yep.
to me speaks volumes. They about your attitude towards your work and about your attitude towards yourself and um he shouldn't have been here this long anyway, James. Onana should have been moved on. To me, at the end of this previous season, it was obvious that it wasn't
Yeah.
working. Um,
Yeah.
but it will always perplex me, James, that how can a goalkeeper go from being voted the best goalkeeper in the Champions League to looking like a guy that doesn't belong at this level? That
Mhm.
looks like a Sunday league goalkeeper because there's just so many basic fundamentals that he's lacking in that I'm looking at going, I don't understand what I mean. Is this mental? Like, how is it
Yeah.
possible that you can look like you've never been done goalkeeper in your life?
Yeah, I have no idea. I genuinely don't get it. I mean, he's had two managers, looks like crap. I mean, he looks worse than Bayindir, who I would not have shared that sentiment before. In a few games, I want to give Bayindir a bit of credit here, because obviously he's got some mistakes in him, unfortunately, and he's got some serious blunders in him. But I will tell you this: he does the basics better than Onana, which is very odd. His passing specifically has still been very good in the games that he's played, which I've never seen. Against Grimsby, Onana's kicking the ball straight out of play on multiple occasions under no pressure. It's bizarre to me. Now, Bayinder's mistakes are in essence still just as unforgivable in a sense. Like the second goal that was conceded to Burnley is a joke, man. Right at you, a soft catch, and you're palming the ball straight down off your own body right to the striker. We've seen that so many times from Onana and them the last few years. It's insane. But it's like anyway, it's less. It's more like yeah, the basics. The problem with Onana, like you said, is it's the basics. It's not the blunders. They're there, but a lot of the basics are just bad. You know, the thing that happened on the corners, like how do you mistime your jump, close your eyes, jump and punch, and completely miss so often? It's the
I,
basics. It's
I
so many
think
little things.
with him, it's concentration issue.
Yeah.
I think also with him that he's trying so hard to rectify his mistakes that he is making major mistakes in doing that. And once you get caught in that spiral where you're trying to self-correct mistakes and you're overthinking everything and you just go from one catastrophe to the next, that's typically mental, you know.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to fix. So United have to, of course, sign a goalkeeper. Lemons is 6'3", 24.
Big. Yeah.
He's 23. The right physical attributes, characteristics. Hopefully, we live 2 weeks, of course, with the international break
Yeah.
to climatize, and hopefully, he is someone that.
And he'll be there, not with Belgium, so it should
Mm,
be plenty of time to bed in.
other two negatives from the weekend of Cunha and Mount injury. What do we know, James?
I don't think they're serious. I don't have any like specifics on it, but as far as I'd heard, there was an expectation they're serious. Now, with Mason Mount,
Mm,
you go, is what does not serious mean? Because you'll have something not serious, and then
mm,
it turns out to be very serious. The one thing I do want to say about that is, if I understand Ruben Amorim's comments correctly, Mason Mount picked up that knock earlier and was able to play through it, but then they decided at halftime that he would come off. So I have a feeling it's not so bad. If, as far as he described it, it was like he picked it up maybe around the time he got tackled by Kyle Walker, which was another
mhm.
ridiculous referee decision, by the way, to spend 6 minutes figuring out how it wasn't a foul when a player gets pushed down from behind. I don't understand that. But regardless, he mentioned it like he picked it up. He was able to finish the half out and wasn't having anything. So hopefully he'll be okay. Cunha, I would imagine, given that there's some sort of muscle injury there, that he probably
Mm,
won't be back immediately after the international break. Just no matter what, any muscle injury you get, 2 weeks is a pretty short turnaround to be fully fit for starting. But
mm,
we'll see. I mean, one thing I'll say is that I worry about it a bit less because, you know, we started to see towards the end of last year, even when injuries would picked up, they would return a lot quicker. They were tended to be more minor. They tend to get back into shape quick enough. So I'm not particularly worried. Hopefully we do find out this week, though, a little bit more in the details of that.
When do we expect Licha back?
As far as I'd heard in summer, they were thinking more October, maybe mid to end. And not because he couldn't technically come back sooner,
Mm,
but specifically what they said to me is that what the person I spoke with said to me is that, look, it's like these major knee injuries, we're going to expect a setback at some point because they're gonna once they get back in full training, they almost always get another muscle injury, from the way that, it's just different. Rodri had that as well. I believe he came back immediately, got like two little muscle injuries that
yeah, that's
delayed
right.
his return for City. It's really normal with those knee injuries. So it's more like if he gets really lucky, he could be back in mid-September because he'll probably be back in training and such. But the full fitness, not having any setbacks of any kind, not having any little muscle tweaks during that, they're kind
And
of thinking more October.
this is going to sound like queer eye for the straight guy. Well, said anyway, can someone cut his hair and put his highlights back in because he looked different to me? I'm like, "Ooh, is that? No, that's not what happened at our Lita. You
Yeah.
know, he needs highlights and he needs his haircut because he doesn't look like the Tim Martinez that we know. But hopefully, yes, you need to get him back really soon. I want to ask
Yeah.
you about young Cheeto Obi, James, because
Mm.
seen him remove United from his socials, from what I've been reading. Hasn't been around the first team in any of the first three games. He's obviously still a kid, but is that something to be concerned about?
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, they could have loaned him out if they weren't intending to bring him around the first team a bit. You know, you start the season out, even, Rasmus Højlund couldn't make the squad. Some of it's just purely numbers, Part of what we probably will go through this season, which is, we can obviously discuss Kobe Mainu here in a minute again, but is that there's with the one game a week, with the way that where they're at, with the signings that they've made. I mean, right now we have 4 senior goalkeepers. The senior squad is a
Play them
little
all
bit.
on the same day.
Yeah, the senior squad is a little full, honestly. Like when you actually look at the starting 11 and the bench, it's not like you'd say, "Oh, there's an obvious player to drop from that." It's full. It's like, who are you dropping, to make space for some of these kids to come in. Now, over the course of the season, you're going to have injuries, you're going to have rotation, you're going to have times when it's right to do that. But the truth of the matter is, there's probably not a lot of minutes for any of the youth players this season in the first team, which isn't the worst thing to stay out of the spotlight. Coming into an unsettled team, we've seen how it can damage these youth players and make it hard. They can flounder. Now, Cheeto Obi, I think, looked good at certain moments, and I do think he'll get his chances during the season. But I think it's, they need to
I mean, I'll be honest,
see what
James.
happens.
I don't think Cheeto Obi's ready for first team football. From what
No,
I
I don't think so either.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and I also want to talk about this statistic, because Kobe Manu, if he'd have went, there was a lot of people talking about the stat. I think that United have had a youth team player in the
Mm,
first team squad since the 30s.
yeah.
This is a stat that people only became aware of about 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: the reason that stat is outstanding is because United have had the quality to produce youth players
Yeah.
since then in first team squad. If you're just putting players on the bench to sustain the statistic, it's worthless.
Yeah.
It's a false stat.
It becomes fake. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like
because
it's.
then the stat becomes the point. But the point of the stat is the fact that you've had its quality, which is
Mhm.
incredible to be able to show how successful the academy is. But if we're falsely sustaining it, maintaining it, then it's artificial. And the question today is, you know, can you still win the league by having a responsibility of bringing through 3 or 4 academy players and putting them in your first team? If you look at Liverpool, aren't held to the standard. City aren't held to the standard. They can go buy whoever they want, whenever they want, and no one's telling them that they need academy players in their
Mm.
team, or else they've lost their identity.
Yep.
United are held to that standard, but I wouldn't be devastated if that stat ended, because to me, if it's being artificially maintained, then it's already dead anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously we have Kobe Mainu in the team, and hopefully he stays in the team and produces this year. But and can be there. But it's like, but it is true. It's like, I think if looking at it now, if the stat ended, what would it tell you? It's not because suddenly we don't care about the academy.
Mhm.
It's because the years of neglect have caught up to us, of not producing the level of talent that is necessary to maintain something like that, to have had an environment that resulted in players like Marcus Rashford leaving, the club, and losing so many of the academy talents that have been there for so long. And that had come through there. And I think that that's what it symbolizes. The fact that it's even in danger it's a symbol already of that. Now, I think there's plenty of work being done to correct that. I think that's
Uh,
one area that's being invested in very well, but
in
it'll
United's
come when it
defense,
comes,
James, in
Yeah.
United's defense, that stat has only come under threat once the
Mhm.
rules change, were incentivized
Yes.
selling academy players.
Yes.
So there's an incentive to now sell them. If that wasn't the case, then there would McTominay might still be at the club.
Yeah.
There'd be other
PSR the other factor is Brexit, funnily enough, because
Mhm.
prior to Brexit, you could sign young players from around the world and bring them into the academy a lot easier and bring them through. Because not, it's like when you only have one country to pull academy talent from, it's going to be harder to produce it. No matter what you think, it's going to be harder to produce it because now United are competing with everybody's academy from one country for youth players to be able to produce talent that can make it into the first team. It does make it harder to produce talent. So those two things have made it more difficult, I think. I mean, when you look at it, they signed Alvaro, Jurado, Garnacho, Ahmad, all these players like right before that Brexit thing happened to try to
Yeah.
get past it, and to try to get a few players in really quickly before it. It's harder since then, and I think they're doing okay, but it certainly, PSR, meaning you need to move some of these kids on, and they have, sold some of them, right? It does make it certainly, you know,
Yeah.
it's easier to just move them on if they're not doing amazing because they're worth so much more than keeping them compared to
Yeah.
other players.
Yeah, and there has to be a recalibration of the rules, James, because
Hmm.
to me, like that's an unintended consequence. It's
Yep.
hard to know what every causal aspect of rules will be
Yep.
until they're implemented, and then you see that has to be changed. In my opinion, there's
Yep.
no way you can have PSR that incentivizes selling young academy players.
Yep.
Um, so let me, for those of you who are watching the video, yes, it's Labor Day. We have our kids at home.
Yeah.
Bit of folks in the background as usual. This
Yeah.
is although this is, I don't know, namaste in my house. Normally, it's for RPGs in the morning.
Yeah.
So we better get this wrapped up soon before that starts. It's just a matter of time. Jadon Sancho,
Yep.
what a strange young man. Sancho. I mean, here's the thing, James. If you're Sancho, right? You either believe that you'll never get a contract like this again in your life because your ability will never get you back here. So therefore, you're loyal to the number on a page, and or you are good enough, take a short-term pay cut, go somewhere else, be exceptional, and then you'll get that money
Yeah.
within 6 to 12 months anyway. Your career's rejuvenated. This looks like a lot of just doesn't want to play football.
Yeah. And I mean, he's taken a loan here to Aston Villa, I believe now, and
Did it go? Oh, so did it actually happen?
the loan has. It's
Oh,
interesting
okay.
though because essentially he once again turned down a permanent switch yesterday. They had a deal with Aston Villa for Emi Martinez lined up, as far as I understand it, that was going to result in a permanent deal for both players going either direction. And Aston Villa were willing to do it, and United were willing to do it. Um, and he wouldn't accept it, and it is an oddity because that's a good move, Aston Villa. So was Inter, so was like all of these deals that were on the table. These are good moves permanently. Now he's betting he's going to have such a good season that he's going to get better options next summer. I don't think so, buddy. Honestly, that's the part that is mind blowing to me because essentially what he's done is he's gambled that he's going to have a good season, a better season on loan with Aston Villa than he would if he had moved. Then that's going to give him better options than he had offered this year from Aston Villa, from Inter, from a lot of good clubs, from Milan. I think uh, good luck, man. Honestly,
I just, I just don't understand the mentality. I mean, the reason why you can't get wages that are analogous to what you're getting at United is because what United were paying you for was the the belief that you would become the player you never became. So your performances have not been at a level. I mean, Chelsea would pay 25 million for a dead body. How did
yeah,
he not get the same for Chelsea? Like, do you
yep,
want to ban footballers that don't even exist, and
yep,
they're bidding for their own players at Strasbourg and stuff, and
yep,
you can't get a contract at Chelsea? Like, son, I would there needs to be some internal examination and what do you want to be, because
yep,
I had seen the Sancho loan and then I'd seen another update from one of the aggregators saying that it didn't go through and had gone through, so I didn't know if it actually had gone through. But you know I Jadon Sancho on loan to Villa. Jadon Sancho who went on loan at the start of the window, being in prime
Yes.
physical condition, already been in someone's squad, had a plan saying, you know what, I'm going to have the season of my life. I believe I can get in Thomas Tuchel's team.
Yep.
Instead, he's. I mean, to me, forget about United and disrespecting the club, disrespecting yourself, kid. Like,
Yeah.
who advises these people?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure. I really am not sure, and I don't know what they think, because like you said, he could have been playing already and gone loan somewhere and been playing, and now he's not. And his
Yeah,
is easily the worst deal here because Rasmus's looks like it's permanent, which means he'll probably play a lot of football. Anthony's is permanent. He's going at the end of the window on a loan. There's no guarantees you even get played much in that kind of situation. It's like you're a periphery. You become very periphery when you join a team on deadline day on loan. It's an emergency type of thing. So we'll see.
Time Malasia doesn't look like he's going to get a move, so looks like he's going to end up still being a Manchester United player by the end of
Mhm.
this. I think there's transfer windows
In
another
Saudi and Turkey that go on longer. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bit longer, but looks like Time Malasia will not get a move out of Manchester United.
Yeah, I mean, not much to say on that front. There's some, I think, some health issue, unfortunately, with the situation that ended up with his knee. That's going to be that puts a lot of clubs off, and you know, it's unfortunate, but not much you could do.
All right, mate. So outside of once Lamans is done, give me your opinion on United's window. How would you read it?
I'm putting 7.5 for me in terms of it. I would have put it a little higher if they hadn't left the keeper till a bit late because we've already dropped points from it, in my opinion. So in the long term, great that you've got a great keeper in. I wish you'd done it 4 games earlier so that we didn't have to deal with the stress of these first 2 weeks and getting knocked out by Grimsby, because I don't think we would have with a decent keeper in net. Um, so that's a little bit lower, but when you consider the amount of turnover, players out, I really like the players they've brought in. Yes, not every problem has been solved. It was never going to be solved in one window, no matter what we wanted. I think it looks on paper like a very, very competent window in general, where a lot of good things. They've got the right ideas, the right players, the right positions, and done well to move players on and turn it over. And I think it makes as well leaves United in a good position going into the next summer window as well, in terms of how they want to finish the squad, that there's very clear answers for what they want to do.
Been really impressed with Mbumo so far, James.
Yeah,
You see
me
how
too.
much he makes United a better team as a goal threat. Obviously was delighted to see him score against Burnley and of course against Grimsby too. But I
Yeah,
feel like this is a guy that will bring 15 goals. Obviously, hopefully Cunha, recovers quickly, chips in with maybe
yep,
10, and
yep.
hopefully it's go into double figures. I would put United ahead of their entire goals tally of last season, just that
Oh
alone.
yeah, 100%.
So, all right, mate. Well, it's about 50 minutes in here. So,
Yeah.
do we have anything else we need to cover before we go?
I think that's it. There's about, as of the time we're saying this, 9 minutes to the deadline. We know nothing else is really going to happen from a United perspective. The one thing I would definitely add to with some certainty is that United, the financial position they've put themselves in, I do think will be active in the January market. Should it look like there's a way to get somebody permanent in
Mm.
who would be part of the long-term plans, um, could be a very good opportunity to reinforce. If United are, in the cusp of Champions League, those European places, as far as I hear it, they definitely have a willingness to operate in there. We're not seeing this. We won't operate in the January window for some arbitrary reason anymore. They're
Yeah,
willing to do that.
there's been so many times United have needed to operate in the
Yeah.
January transfer window when they haven't, and it's been really consequential. So they
Yep.
have to have the ability to do that. I know they brought Dorgu in
Yep.
last January, but yeah, it's something that managers need, that flexibility, and they need that support
For
because
sure.
it's definitely something that United need to be better at. All right, mate, we'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks to all
Sounds
of
good.
you for all your downloads, likes, retweets, and all that. Don't forget, my friend here will be doing tons of content before we come back. If there's a need to do a podcast, whatever, Thursday next week, whatever, we'll do them. We'll see how things go. I'm sure there will be some news. We'll see. But other than that, folks, wish you all the best. Jimsy, take care, mate.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.